In this video, I'm going to talk about one of the common pitfalls of using a tool like Pulumi, which is what happens when Pulumi's state gets out of sync with the real state of your cloud provider. And I'm going to show what I think is the most common example that you're likely to encounter, which is when a resource has somehow been deleted from the cloud, but without Pulumi knowing about it. I'm going to demonstrate it with this simple stack, which you can see is just creating two Cognito user pools. So I'm going to start by deploying the stack. And as we would expect, these user pools now appear in the AWS console. But now I'm going to confuse things by deleting this first user pool. And this is something that can sometimes happen, maybe because someone does manually delete something through the console like I've just done. Maybe some piece of automation that's gone wrong. The first thing to understand about this is that at this stage, Pulumi does not know that the user pool has been deleted. It maintains its state separately from the cloud provider, and it doesn't receive any kind of notification. So initially, you might not see any difference to your stack. As an example, I'm going to add some tags to this. I'm just using the tags, they're meaningless really, but just a way to force some updates just for example purposes. And what I'm going to do, you can see that I've just changed the tags for the second user pool. So the second user pool is the one that I didn't delete. And what I'm trying to show is that this operation still succeeds. And that's because it doesn't involve the first user pool in any way. And therefore, Pulumi doesn't have an opportunity to discover that that first user pool has somehow disappeared. Now let's see what happens if I try to change the tags on the first user pool. So this is the one which I did manually delete through the console. And at this point, Pulumi will give you an error. Notice that it didn't detect the error at the preview either, because during the preview stage, it's only comparing the new state to its old state as far as Pulumi knows. So it's not until you actually perform the deployment that you get an error like this complaining about the user pool not existing. This actually leaves us in a slightly complicated situation, and I think this can be quite confusing for newcomers to Pulumi because you can seem kind of stuck. For one thing, you can't just recreate a new user pool that happens to have that ID because we don't get to choose the IDs, they get set by the Cognito service. So that's not an option for us. So you might think then, well, how about I just try to start over and just destroy the stack? You'll find that this also doesn't work for the same reason. Pulumi wants to delete the user pool. So you might be left wondering, how can I get out of this situation? I can't delete the resource, I can't update the resource. The only thing I can really do is just try to leave it alone in Pulumi, and then Pulumi will never know that its state has changed. The solution is that we have to manually change Pulumi's state and just remove the entry that represents the user pool. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do. The first thing we need is an identifier for the resource that's been deleted, and we need this in a specific form, and you can get this by running Pulumi stack, which we've seen before as a command that lists all the resources and outputs in a stack. But here I'm going to add --show--earns. So an earn is a uniform resource name, and this is how Pulumi actually represents the resources internally. So you can see that it's listed all of the resources in our stack, and underneath each one, it's got this earn. So in our case, it's this user pool here, user pool 1, that actually doesn't exist anymore, and so we want to remove it from the state. So you want to copy this whole thing. Then to remove it from the state, you have to run Pulumi state delete and then the name of the earn. Now before I paste it, I just want to mention another common pitfall, which actually doesn't apply here, but is worth knowing about, which is that sometimes, especially if you use component providers, which I'm going to talk about in the next video, your earns will have a dollar symbol in them. And if you're using Bash like I am, this causes a whole load of problems because Bash will then try to do variable expansion on that dollar symbol, and it might not be clear that it's done that, and so then you'll start to get errors about the earn not existing. And you might potentially have similar problems with other shells. So for me, I find it a useful habit to always put my erns inside single quotes. Has to be single quotes because bash still performs variable expansion inside double quotes. You'll get a warning, of course. I'm not quite sure what that random chunk that came out there was, but just say yes to that, and it will tell you that it was successfully deleted. And now you'll find that it doesn't exist in the state anymore. So now I genuinely can do, for example, Pulumi destroy, and you can see that there's now nothing to delete. The other user pool was already deleted in my previous destroys. That's why that doesn't show up. And now the first user pool, the one that I've already deleted and that caused all these problems, has also disappeared from the state.